Story 1. Am I the a-hole for refusing to tell my husband the gender of our baby after he skipped going to the doctor appointment with me? My husband and I are expecting. This is our first baby, and we're excited. Thing is, he barely attends any doctor appointments with me, and his excuses aren't even valid. He's willing to miss the doctor appointment over soccer or a drink or board game with friends. His response is always, "I'm not the one carrying the baby. Why do I have to go see the doctor with you?" Last week was my final straw. He was supposed to come with me for the baby's gender reveal appointment, but he chose to not come last minute because his friend invited him to a fish and chips meal. I was pretty livid, but didn't make a fuss about it. Mom went with me instead. He texted asking me to tell him the results, boy or girl, but I refused to tell him. He kept spam calling me, but I hung up each time. He came home fuming, demanding I tell him the results, but I refused and bluntly told him since he refused to attend the appointment, then he got no results till after the baby's born and said I was willing to perish on that hill. He went off calling me spiteful and immature for doing this and punishing him. He said he's the father and has the right to know. He then called me dramatic since I wasn't alone and Mom was with me. I said he gets no results, period. He's been fuming about it and told his family, and now they're pressuring me to stop playing mind games with him and tell him, but I declined. Am I the a-hole? Not really. If he said he was going to be there, despite earlier times when he's blown off appointments, if he said he was going to be there for it, and if he cared about this, what gender this baby is, he would have been there. Not really the a-hole. He's got to be part of this. It just feels like he is not a part of how this kid is being brought into this world, and I'm sure she's kind of questioning how this kid is going to be brought up, if he's going to just palm off all the raising of the kid duties onto the mom. Not really. I don't think so. What do you think? Story 2. Evil stepfather gets what he deserves. When I was 15, my mom started dating a man she met on a dating website. I didn't like him the first time I met him, and 2 months later, he moved into the house. About 3 weeks after he moved in, he took my skateboards, self-built half-pipe, ramps, BMX bike, ice hockey gear, and many other things to the dump one day while I was at school. He said he did this because he didn't want all of my stuff cluttering up his garage. Maybe 2 months later, he punched me in the stomach for the first time because I got up from the dinner table without asking to be excused. From there, it escalated into full-fledged beatdowns from the smallest perceived slight to his authority. One day, he decided to take my extensive Pokemon card collection, even more extensive comic book collection, my Game Boy and PS2 with all the assorted games, and my fantasy and sci-fi book collection, and got rid of it all because 15-year-old boys should be playing football and baseball, not being it's the F word, F slur, not going to say it, nerd playing with Pokemon cards and reading comic books. I would like to add that he was a middle school teacher, and in his off time, refereed and umpired local middle and high school sports games. My mom never intervened, and in fact acquiesced when he demanded that she stop giving me lunch money because the little smeg will just spend it on comics and other gay smeg. One day, I took maybe $3 in change out of his change jar so that I could buy a slice of pizza and some fruit punch during lunch at school, because I was tired of being hungry. My twin sister was always a bit of an a-hole and frequently blackmailed me into doing her chores from a young age. I was fed up and refused to do something, so she told him what I had done. This man actually called the police and pressed a larceny charge against me, and once the police had left, proceeded to beat me senseless. At that point, I ran away. When the cops found me and returned me to my home, I found out that he had been trying to talk to my mom into sending me away to military school or something of that nature. I ran away again, and between having run away several times and the larceny charge, ended up turning 16 in juvenile detention. I spent the next couple of years miserable and afraid, frequently contemplating self-unaliving. Once I was out on my own, I didn't speak to my mom for several years. We eventually reconciled, but by that point they had married. I was a lot bigger than I had been as a young teenager and had gotten into weightlifting, so he no longer acted like he was going to punch me to make me flinch, much less actually hit me, and we basically avoided each other for the most part. My mother found out that she had stage 4 cancer and no longer wanted to waste any of the time she had left with him, so she had a lawyer draft up a separation agreement whereby he would receive a set amount of money upon separation and would have 45 days to retrieve his belongings from the house. He had spent his entire inheritance in 6 months and then had to sell his mother's house that he grew up in order to settle his debts shortly before they started dating. And my mother bought the house back from the bank before they married. She allowed him to keep the house, and he moved back into his mother's house. My mother passed away about 9 months after their separation, and despite the agreement, had been allowing him to come and get his stuff piecemeal. I put an immediate end to that. He was past the deadline to remove his personal effects, and they were now legally mine to dispose of as I saw fit. I sold his baseball card collection, around $14,000, and his autographed sports memorabilia, roughly $11,000, and also sold all of his woodworking equipment, along with several finished pieces of furniture that he had made. $6,500, I think. I kept his mother's engagement ring, platinum band 3 diamonds, roughly 2 carats, wedding band, his coin collection, I also collect coins, and some tools and other odds and ends. Now comes the real fun. Around a month ago, I finally saw him at the grocery store. As he was leaving, I approached him. I told him I had sold his collections as he was pushing his cart out towards the car. He reacted exactly as I expected. He took a swing at me multiple times. I already had my phone ready to dial 911. Several of the punches missed, and the ones that did connect didn't have much effect because he's nowhere near as strong as he was 20 years ago in his 40s. And I am no longer a skinny little 15-year-old. He continued to try to punch me as I spoke to the 911 operator and was actively ramming his grocery cart into my new Toyota as the police officers pulled into the parking lot. He was arrested for assault, communicating threats, and destruction of property. As a result, he lost his job and pension at the local middle school, and because he had never learned how to save money while married to my somewhat wealthy mother, ended up having to sell his mother's house because he hired an expensive lawyer thinking he could somehow beat the charges. My nephew, who was on the football team, made it well known to his friends that he not only had just been arrested and convicted of assault as well as other charges, but that he had also beat me as a child, causing several parents to call for him to resign from refereeing and umpiring for local sports games. My niece and my girlfriend's much younger sister are enrolled at the middle school where he worked, and say that he was not only universally disliked, but when he came up to the school to get his belongings, he made a big scene and ended up hysterically crying as he was leaving. At least, that's what they've heard from the kids who were attending summer school at the time. His son, who he was equally abusive towards as a child, refused to take him or help him out, so the abusive stepfather ended up having to take a job as a cashier at Walmart so that he could afford the rent on his awful little trailer in an absolutely awful neighborhood. Even though Walmart is not the closest Walmart to my house, that is now the only place where I go grocery shopping or to purchase anything I need. I purposely stand in line longer than I need to just so that he can be the one who has the pleasure of ringing up my purchases. The first time I went through his line, he attempted to ring up multiple items more than one time to overcharge me, and when I called him out on it, he said that I was mistaken. I asked for a manager, and the manager believed him that it was an accident, but he learned that he can't get away with that. The second time, I made sure to be as nice as possible and had to ask for a manager because he was overwhelmingly rude. The people in line behind me backed me up, and he got in some trouble for that. Every time I go there and step into line, I see him perish a little inside, and it gives me such satisfaction. Sometimes I'll say that I'm paying with exact change, and as I'm about to hand him the money, I'll say, "Oh, I didn't realize I had rare coins from his collection in my pocket. Guess I'll just use my credit card." I just sold his expensive ratcheting wrench set, and so on Monday, when he works again, I'm going to go buy my daughter one of their better above-ground pools, and as he's wringing it out, tell him, "I know that daughter is just going to love this pool. It's not like I would have ever used those expensive ratcheting wrenches anyway." Too long didn't read? A-hole stepfather got rid of all my prized possessions as a child and beat the hell out of me regularly. I ended up getting all of his prized possessions and selling most of them, and when I told him, he tried to assault me in public, which resulted in criminal charges, losing his job, and his house. Now I get to see him all the time and rub his nose in it. Yeah, going through that is a lot, getting abused like that. And just the fact that this guy sold his Pokemon card collection and all his stuff, yet this guy has hobbies of his own. Just stuff that he might consider to be manly. A baseball card collection? While someone has a Pokemon card collection? You have no reason to look down on them. I'm sorry. Maybe just rubbing his nose in it. It might just be how often he got beat up. I can understand wanting to make sure that this guy is miserable. Maybe at some point you might need to get past it. It kind of feels like he's still kind of living rent-free in his head. Do you think this guy needs to move on or just continue to rub his nose in it?
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 3. Today I fracked up by ruining my husband's relationship with his best friend. My husband and I, both 35, have been together for 7 years and married for 5. He has 2 older brothers that he isn't particularly close with. The one person he is very close to is his cousin Aaron. They lived together after my husband graduated college. He was the best man at our wedding, and Aaron even lived with us for a year while we were married so he could finish school. I like Aaron a lot. He's felt like a brother-in-law to me, much more than my actual in-laws have ever felt. My husband and I have had a rough 3 years. Between COVID, there was a point where both of our fathers were in terrible health. We've dealt with infertility issues, and sadly in July we had a stillbirth at 34 weeks pregnant. And Aaron has been there for us through all of that. He is probably the person my husband can lean on the most for support. Last night, I get a call from Aaron's longtime girlfriend, Jennifer. She asked if it was okay if she could come over and have some girl talk with me. Jennifer and Aaron have been together about as long as my husband and I have. She has 3 kids from a previous relationship, and we love them. They spend the night at our house, and her older kids dog sit for us. She comes over and proceeds to tell me some serious problems she has had with Aaron, and she's at a loss of what to do. The main crux of her issues are Aaron is in an insane amount of debt and has basically used her as a place to crash for 7 years. He is constantly criticizing her for her parenting styles, saying she babies his teenage children. And finally, he's lying about where he's going, and his locations have him at a massage place that does happy endings. I hate to say that the financial issue and the parenting issues I already vaguely knew about. Even my husband and I have called Aaron out about how he talks about the teenagers, but I had no idea how bad it was. We talked through it, and I flat out asked her, "Is he going to a massage parlor and getting happy endings behind your back? If he's doing that, would you still stay with him?" And she said, yes. So I gave her some advice about boundaries and talking to him, and I left it at that. After she left, I went upstairs and told my husband what she said. He proceeds to have a complete breakdown. He's in tears. I finally get him to talk, and he starts saying things like, "Can I just have one person in my life that I can trust? I can't go to my brothers to talk, and now I can't trust Aaron because I know he's been doing this stuff. He's fracking better than this." Just completely and utterly destroyed. I feel terrible. I didn't even think about it when I told him what Jennifer said. I didn't even think that it could ruin their relationship. Aaron is the only person he goes to for advice and really looks up to as a big brother. And I just completely destroyed that image. I'm going with the classic pretend it didn't happen technique this morning. But I just feel like I completely took away the one family member who felt comfortable turning to for emotional support. The hell do I do? Today I fracked up by telling my husband all the fracked up smeg his best friend and surrogate brother has been doing to his girlfriend, and I probably ruined their relationship at a time when my husband really needed support. That is a hard situation to be in. Very, very difficult. But I think, as much as this doesn't replace having a friend that you can talk to, I think you have just demonstrated your trust in your husband. You were there, told him flat out, honestly, what was going on. If you had swept it under the rug and pretended it didn't happen, that would affect your relationship with your husband. I think she had to just really let him know. They already knew the problems he was having before, and it sucks, but it's what had to be done. He was probably going to find out later, and if you told that you knew after he found out about this situation, that would have reflected on you. You did all you could. That's it.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.